Oops. Hello, and thank you for joining me. This is No Soundbites Allowed. I am your host, Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier. I am here with you every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to speak with you, the public, to talk with you about the issues that matter and affect all of us all around the world. And regardless of whether your government, whether the internet overlords believe in your right to free speech, we on this channel do. And we want to speak with you about a lot of things that are going on right now. So we're looking forward to hearing everyone's voice. And in the United States, this is, of course, the Memorial Day weekend. Everyone's out. Or is it Labor Day? I always get that confused. The holiday is this weekend. Many people are watching football as we speak. And that's a great thing. It's a wonderful pastime. Except it's not going to change how much money you're going to get paid, how many people are going to work for the second half of this year, what's happening to those people in Afghanistan right now. I want you to think about it. Right now in Afghanistan, there are people who are trapped by the Taliban and are suffering, and they can't celebrate watching football. They can't sit back in their backyard and have a barbecue. And that is troubling. That is, it's sad. It's a big deal, and it matters, and I hope that everyone does have a good time, but we're all not going to. And there's a lot of really big things that are happening right now that I think we really, really need to speak about. Now, I realize that it looks like we're back up. We're still having some of the problems with the internet overlords, and I'm working on it as we speak to try and give you the very best of coverage that I possibly can. But in the meantime, let's just jump right into it. There is so much that is going on right now, folks. And perhaps the thing I want to start with is something that you didn't notice. And, I should mention, please, you are more than welcome to contact us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, on DLive. Reach out on the social media. You can call into the program at 607-242-1582. This is about your comments, your thoughts about the issues that are affecting us all. But I wanted to start today talking about an editorial. Now, each week, for the last couple of weeks, we've been sending out editorials to every news media agency in the country, in our local region here in upstate New York. And we sent out this one in speaking about what's going on in Afghanistan. We see that our open borders have 1.1 million people that have violated, that have come in as illegal aliens. There are over 40,000 children that are suffering child abuse. And when I say that, I mean the child abuse of being sent by themselves on 1,000-mile treks across several countries to go through our desert in the hopes of being found. In the meantime, being trafficked, mixed in with sex traffickers and drug gangs. And this is being allowed. And this is a problem. We have our inflation reaching unforeseen levels. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. We have millions, tens of millions that are fundamentally addicted to the stimulus payments. We have millions of jobs that are going unfilled. We had a miss in the jobs report. 500,000 jobs were not filled as was expected. Our economy is in trouble. And as we are celebrating right now, 13 members of service members died, and we have hundreds, potentially thousands of individuals that are sitting in Afghanistan right now and cannot get home. The thing that's really interesting about that, folks, not one newspaper would publish that. Not one newspaper would share with you an opinion that we made it down to, in some cases, we edited it down to 200 words. Not one newspaper in the nation was willing to say, hey, we have a problem. We have a problem. This is from August 28th, saying we need to fix this. We need to go out and we need to make sure that we are doing everything we can to get every American home, to have them here with us as we celebrate this holiday. That's got to be troubling, folks, because and I know I say troubling a lot. I don't have another word for it. Depressing, upsetting. It's amazing. Vic, thank you for joining us. First one to comment today. Thank you for that. And Vic mentions the Biden import ban on ammunition is not about protecting lives, but about taking potential protectional ability to defeat tyrannical governments as outlined in the Second Amendment of the Constitution. So you're talking about Joe Biden has already said, and we have covered it on this program before, that he wants to ban handguns, not just the, quote, assault rifles. By the way, the only assault rifles that Joe Biden has had anything to do with were the assault 600,000 rifles and small arms that he left for the Taliban that they are using at this moment to hunt down Americans. I want to be very clear. They are hunting Americans in Afghanistan at this moment with 600,000 assault weapons, actual assault weapons from the military. That came from Joe Biden because he wanted to run away because he was afraid of the Taliban. That's the only answer we have. He decided to leave civilians and he gave the Taliban weapons to hunt American citizens, and to make it even worse, he gave them a list of the names of every American in Afghanistan. And we know that the Taliban and ISIS and Al-Qaeda are running around right now with the assault weapons given to them by the Biden administration, and they are going door to door. That's not supposition. That is not a guess. That is not an estimate that I am making here. This is actually reported fact. And this is coming from Fox News, San Francisco. Oh, no, wrong story. Hang on, I'm going to get to it. Hang on. I want to make sure I have a lot of coverage here. And I want to make sure I get the right one. There it is. Sorry, hit the wrong button. Here it is. As reported by the New York Post, California woman in Kabul says Taliban is hunting for Americans in Afghanistan. This is on September 5th, today. That's right, today, Sunday, they came out with this announcement at 10 a.m. that a pregnant woman, I want to be very clear, this isn't just a woman from California, this is an American who is pregnant and was left behind by the Biden administration. She, in fact, reached out to the embassy, was told where she was supposed to go, and they never came and got her. They left her on her own. And she's part of the hundreds that were left behind. Now, this is a very interesting story because there's two pieces of coverage on this. I want to show you something about how the media is downplaying this because they don't want to talk about Afghanistan anymore. They do not want to talk about what's going on with the Americans that have been left behind. They want you to forget them. They want you to forget this has ever happened. They want you to vote Democrat. So looking at this story, we see a woman who is identified by her first name, Narissa, who has reached out. She says, there have been days, where I think to myself, am I going to make it home? Am I going to end up living here in Afghanistan? Am I going to end up dying here in Afghanistan? As she told The Voice of America. She says that since the U.S. completed its military withdrawal on August 31st, the Taliban began hunting Americans. Apparently, they're going door to door now, trying to see if anyone has a blue passport. This is terrifying. This is terrifying things to know. And she says, it was so hard just to get on a flight. There were a couple of days where we had to sleep on the streets. People were literally stepping over people. That's how bad it was to trying to get into the Hamid Karzai International Airport in Kabul. She said she eventually contacted the State Department and was told to go to a specific area where they would meet and be escorted to an evacuation flight. At one point, she got within 15 steps of the airport and Americans. And then she was told that the Taliban blocked her off and were shooting. I wanted to show you this very simple coverage. Okay, and the links will be in the description at the end of the show. So I want you to see that because this is how Newsweek is telling the world. This left-leaning newspaper, Newsweek, this is how they describe this. Because they go and say, yes, the same start that she's been in Afghanistan. Is she going to die there? That they're going apparently door to door. But it's the things they're saying in between and how far down they're dropping it. See, you have to really look through to find out, when did she say that the United States Department didn't help her, that she was 15 steps away? At the end of the article. They buried this. Here's what I just mentioned to you. She was 15 steps away from the airport and was told she couldn't get there because the Taliban blocked her. That's the end of the article. They buried this. They don't want you to know. They didn't want to tell you this. They buried the fact that there were troops at the gates preventing her from getting home. That the Biden administration, who promised us, Americans who wanted to go home, they wanted to leave Afghanistan, well, they would, of course, we were going to take everyone who wanted to leave, except that wasn't true. Our international partners, the Taliban, who Joe Biden is now negotiating with to give them taxpayer money, well, they didn't care. And by the way, when they say it's taxpayer money, they mean that this is a hostage situation and we are paying for the hostages. They're going to call it foreign aid. It's your tax money being used to pay off the hostages. And this is part of the reason why the Taliban is going out and grabbing up American citizens, and because they're hostages. They're going to get funding because of this. Hot Chicks mentions no more Russian 45s. Well, not for the Taliban. They now have M16s. They now have service revolvers from the United States. So when Joe Biden tells me that I, as an American citizen, to get back to Vic's point, and they tell me I, as an American citizen, can't have a 9mm handgun. And again, he said this at CNN on a town hall. He said this on national news, that he wants to get rid of 9mm handguns. He wants to get rid of any, any firearm that has the capability of firing 20 rounds or more. Well, that's every firearm that exists at this moment. That's everything. That's rifles. That's shotguns have that capability. He wants to get rid of every firearm that exists in America. But yet he's more than happy to give those firearms to terrorists, acknowledged terrorists, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and the Taliban. That's just amazing to me. And I understand. There's a lot of people, they want to watch football. They want to get away from it right now. You know why I'm talking about this? Why I'm still talking about this? Why I'm pointing out the information that is subdued? Because I am almost absolutely sure that 95% of Americans didn't read or weren't aware of this story about Narissa in Afghanistan. You know, I'd love to watch football, but I want Narissa to come home. I want her to have her baby on American soil. I want them to be safe, her husband to come with her. I want all of the hundreds of Americans that are over in Afghanistan right now that were abandoned by the Biden administration to be home, as well as seeing the resignation of Secretary Lloyd Austin, General Milley, Secretary Anthony Blinken, Joe Biden, who I believe should be impeached for this because this is a treasonous act. He put American citizens in harm's way. And he's going to use your tax dollars, money taking it right out of your pocket, taking it out of your kids and your grandkids' pocket because we're in debt right now. He's taking it out of our pockets and he wants to give it to the Taliban to increase global terror. And that's besides what he's going to be doing in Iran, which we're going to get to in a moment, increasing global terror. It's a big deal. And I think the internet's allowing us to speak right now. Again, folks, I can't tell if anyone's seeing this or not, but I'm not going to let it stop me. You know, so that's one thing. I wanted to address that and to address Vic's comment because I wanted to get that a little bit later in the show. But it's a big deal. And we're watching the news media, we're watching Democrats in the Biden administration. They are desperate to talk about absolutely anything except what their first and primary obligation is, to protect American citizens. Think about it. You're not hearing about the southern border. No one's talking about what's going down in our southern border, and we're going to get to it in a moment. ISIS is on an international surge. They are going to other countries right now, and they are getting in, even with COVID restrictions, even with lockdowns. They are entering countries, and they are committing acts of terror. And we have an open southern border that Joe Biden won't talk about. Kamala Harris, where is she? I asked that of anyone who's watching this, whether you're watching it live or on tape. Tell me, do you know where Kamala Harris is? Have you seen Kamala Harris in the last, 3 weeks? Have you heard her do anything? In February, she was put in charge of our southern border. From the day she was put into place until today, over 1.1 million illegal aliens have crossed our border. From the day that Kamala Harris took over the job till today, there's over 1 million, over 1.1 million illegal aliens, and now we have ISIS on a surge around the world, empowered by the defeat of Joe Biden in Afghanistan and the victory of the Taliban, and the fact that the ISIS killed American soldiers with really no retaliation whatsoever. And they're on a barn stomp. They're going around to other countries and they are starting to kill people. And we have an open border. Where's Kamala Harris? Where are the Democrats saying we're going to secure the border? Hello, Gloria. And this is the first time I think I've seen you with us today. I thank you for joining us. Gloria mentions, would the spiritual black Americans of 1873 be outraged now that half of the America's black babies in 2021 are aborted? Would they be disgusted by black leaders who look the other way? Abortion's a big deal. And yeah, I think it's 70%, 70% of black babies are aborted in America at this time. So that's huge. It's an amazing thing. And it's sad. It's sad because abortion is being used in America primarily as a means of birth control, not as a means of last resort, but as the first and primary resort. I am pro-life. We understand that there are concessions that have been made over the history of America to allow individuals to have abortions with some restrictions. In New York State, they have pushed for, Democrats have voted for and believe in late-term abortions. They believe in abortions up to the moment of birth. They are willing to abort a 9-month-old baby as they are being born. I find that disgusting. I find that horrendous. And I know there's a lot of people who look at abortions and they say, well, you believe in terms of the vaccine mandates, which I'm going to get to in a second, and they believe, okay, well, my body, my choice, so you must therefore also support abortion. You must believe in killing babies at the moment of birth because it's a woman's body. It's her choice. No, because that's a false equivalent. That's not an argument. And I want to debunk that right now because it's not real. Let's deal with the real question here. It's a woman's body and a baby has a body too. That's what the Texas Heartbeat Bill is about. There is a life there. There is a heartbeat there. So someone is alive. In the United States, what is supposed to happen, the purpose, the purpose of government is to protect the people who cannot defend themselves. That's what government's here for. Excuse me. And it seems that the internet overlords didn't like me mentioning this, but I'm going to keep going. So the purpose of government is to defend the defenseless, those who cannot protect themselves, and to do so better than you can protect yourself individually. That counts for everyone. That's why the government is an advocate for children. Always will be. That's their first and primary job. The government is there to protect babies, unborn or born. Now, you can tell me, Mike, well, it's not a baby until it's born. I don't agree with that at all. And the science doesn't believe that. Remember, all these people follow the science. Well, the science tells us that is a baby. It is not some other amoeba foreign object. It is a living being in womb. The fact that it is not out of the womb does not mean that it is not a human being. It has a heartbeat. It has feelings. It can feel pain. It understands what's going on in the world. It can interact with its mother and let the mother know what's going on. That is a life. It is the purpose of the United States government to take care of that. Now, does that mean no abortions whatsoever? No. We're a society. We have grown to the point where we have made concessions for various reasons. You may agree with all of them or you may not. That's not my point. But my point is that using abortion as a primary source of birth control is sickening to me. It is a negative. I understand the cases, rape, incest, other circumstances, the danger to the mother's life. We can have that conversation, and that has been the basis of a national effort. But to say that it's just something you do, where we see some women have gone and had 5, 6, 7 abortions in their lifetimes, if not more, many of them 3 or 4 times as teenagers into their 20s, there's a problem. That's because we don't value that baby as a life. Because we have been told by organizations like NOW, NWO, or the Planned Parenthood, who has a vested interest. Planned Parenthood makes money off of this. Planned Parenthood was created by a eugenics promoter. By the way, if you don't know what eugenics is an ideology followed by the 1940s Germans and many others that says that you weed out people from the race. So individuals who are not perfect, who are not perfectly the ideal of people, elitists in power, you remove them. And Margaret Sanger, who created Planned Parenthood, did so as a means to eliminate black people. That is on the record. That is the history. It is so true that Planned Parenthood eliminated the mention of Margaret Sanger's name so that people wouldn't know how they got created, what their original mission statement was. And Planned Parenthood isn't there to do anything except abort babies. That is their job. That's why they sell those baby parts to medical facilities. It's a sick, horrible thing. It's a serious subject. And you can tell me, Mike, I don't agree. Okay. You can tell me, Mike, you can tell me a lot of things about this. But what you can't say is the baby isn't alive. Once we have that heartbeat, that is a living being. You can't tell me it's a thing. It doesn't exist until it comes out of the womb, because that's not what the science says. And for all you people who tell me about COVID and say, you have to follow the science. Okay, we're following the science. That is a birth. That is a human being. And they need to be protected. So do I agree with the Texas bill? Yes, I do. Do I think that any of the slaves or the freed black Americans in the 1865 and beyond, who fought for this nation, who fought in the Civil War for freedom, for the ability for their children to grow, would they have ever considered that? No. Would they have ever imagined there would be a day when 70% of women are unmarried in the black community, and that their children, that 70% of abortions are by black women? Would they have ever considered that as being an option, that was a reality? No, they wouldn't. So, Gloria, to answer your question, yeah, I think it's horrendous. And I may lose people who are supporting me. I may lose people who are, there may be people who don't want to subscribe to us anymore. They may unsubscribe. We may get people who do subscribe. I don't know. But I'm telling you what I believe. And you can believe whatever you wish. But if that belief says a baby isn't alive, I think you're mistaken, both based on science, which we have as a fact, as well as everything else. So the argument isn't a question of it's your body, you get to decide. I agree with that. The baby has a body as well. The baby has a right to life as well. So there's your problem, and that's the difference. But who knows? This is an interesting time in our nation. It's a question that has to be asked. And yes, we try and balance these differing points of view. Democrats want to kill babies. That is what abortion is. They never like to say that they're pro-abortion. They never like to say that they believe in killing babies. They'll just tell you they believe in late-term abortions, which means they're going to kill a baby at the end of the term, up to the 9th month. They tell you that they want to increase the number of people who are able to get to be able to kill babies, that they want to use your tax dollars to fund that, even though Planned Parenthood is profitable by itself and it gets millions of dollars in donations. So it doesn't need your tax money. It's a controversial subject. I have no doubt with that. You can tell me a lot of things about this abortion, and I'm happy to hear them. If you think I've been completely wrong, please tell me why. If you think that a baby with a heartbeat is not a human being until it gets born, which flies against the face of the science, we know for a fact that is incorrect, then please, I want to hear that. I want to hear that discussion. Oh, and the other big one that we'd like to hear is, oh, well, you're a man, so you don't get a choice. I'm a man, and I'm part of that choice. I'm part of creating that baby. Yes, I have a voice. What, you're going to tell me that because I don't drive a truck, I can't do anything about traffic laws? Are you saying that because I'm not active as a... Better yet, are you part of the military? I was. So does that mean that you have no voice on defense spending for the United States? I own firearms. Does that mean that if you don't own firearms, you don't get a voice in the Second Amendment? Oh, I'm online. I'm speaking publicly. Does that mean that if you don't speak publicly, then you don't get a voice for your First Amendment right? It's a silly argument to say, well, you're not exactly this specific person, so you don't get to have a voice. That's not how society works. That's not how the world works. That's just not real. We're human beings. We can empathize, we can understand, we can realize, and to a certain extent, we do have interactions with this. We are connected to this. So we do have a voice. Now, if you choose not to hear that voice, that's up to you, and that's perfectly fine. If you're asking me my opinion, I'm giving it to you now. Do I agree with it on the face of it? Yes, I do. Do I think this is the discussion the nation needs to have? Yes, I do. If you disagree with that and you want to unsubscribe, I understand. If you want to comment on that, I'm happy to hear it. Call into 607-242-1582. Tell me what you think. Leave me a comment on Facebook, YouTube, DLive, Twitter. Perfectly fine to hear your voice. Tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why that is not a baby and why that baby does not have a right to life. I'm more than happy to hear that argument. I'm more than happy to have that discussion. Don't yell at me. Don't scream at me. I'm not evil, immoral. I have understanding. I'm willing to make certain compromises on that because I understand that's politics. But let's have the discussion. And that's the problem in America right now. We can't have a discussion. We're being demonized. So if I say this, as I have, well, people will say, we have to cancel you. You can't say that. That's not allowed. How dare you say that? And that's the problem. That's my opinion on it. Now, and again, I'm happy to hear everyone else's. Gloria, I hope I answered your question. And if you think not, tell me why. If you think I misunderstood, tell me why. Hot Chicks, I'm happy to hear what you have to say. Vic, Jason, everybody. Let me know what you think about that. I'm happy to talk about Texas. Wasn't planning to talk about Texas. Wasn't planning to talk about abortion. But yeah, we can have that conversation. This is your show, folks. It's a live stream with you. And I'm happy to hear what people have to say about that. And I'm interested to hear what people have to say about that in the United Kingdom, in Canada, in Mexico, and Peru. I'd love to hear what people around the world have to say about this because if I am not mistaken, most countries do not support abortion as Democrats do here in the United States. There is a far less of an importance put on it, and we see that abortions are not as dominated by minorities like it is here in the United States. So it is very different. And Hot Chicks mentioned, she says, hey, Texas. Jason says, your opinion would matter more if you would identify as a non-birthing woman. Well, I mean, there's the inhumanity of it right there. You can't say a mom anymore. It's not a woman anymore. There are no women, there are no men, unless it's politically advantageous. And then you're definitely a woman, and there are definitely men if it's politically advantageous, because men are bad and women are great. And we have to support women and we have to believe women, except when there are sexual assaults against high-ranking Democrats in elected offices, like Andrew Cuomo, who is protected for how many years? Like Joe Biden, who has, do you remember the name Tara Reid? A woman that even Kamala Harris believed, supported, and said her sexual assault allegation against Joe Biden should be frontline news for the American people in 2020. Before, she said that in 2019, excuse me, before she got the nomination for vice president. And then on that day, well, Tara Reid isn't as important anymore. She threw her straight under her bus. So much for Me Too. So, yeah. The progressives out there, they love to say there's no gender except when it's politically expedient. And moms don't exist unless, it's important for an issue they want to talk about for their positions. And if you are pregnant, well, you're a woman. If you're getting an abortion, but you're a non-birthing woman, or more importantly, you're a non-birthing, they say parent. You're a non-birthing parent if you don't get an abortion. Do you notice? And this is the wording that they use. Look at the news. This is how they're trying to train you. You're a woman if you get an abortion, according to the progressives. But you're a non-birthing parent if you actually have a child, if you take that child to term. They're dehumanizing you for doing what is natural. And that kind of tells you their point of view. They don't think of you as a human being. They think of you as a political agenda. That's what abortion is in America right now. It's not a conversation about, well, what's the best compromise we could possibly make? How can we best defend those who are the most defenseless possible while also respecting individuals who have made bad choices, who have difficulties in their lives? How do we match those two things up? But every time we try to have that conversation, we have individuals, progressives, who are using this as a tool to get reelected, to get more money, to gain more power, and they dehumanize one group of people and support another. And it's as simple as saying, oh, you're not a woman, you're a non-birthing parent. You have no existence. You are less than human. So is your child. But the people who support the left, well, you're a woman and you are proud and we have to support you and we have to support your decision. See, that person is human. They get respect. They get support. People who oppose them are not human. And that's the problem, I think. That's why this is such a heated debate. Mavis mentions, I used to be pro-choice when it was safe, legal, and rare. But then the left started shouting their abortions and calling unborn children clumps of cells. As a parent, I find that talk disgusting. I do too. And again, I'm not telling people how to live their lives. But Mavis, I agree with you. When you dehumanize, and we hear this a lot, they dehumanize. If you don't agree with critical race theory, well, then you're a racist. You're no longer a human being. You're now a racist. Doesn't matter the color of your skin. It doesn't matter what your political beliefs are. It doesn't matter your reasons for disagreeing with critical race theory. You are an evil racist, and that's all you are. You have now been dehumanized, and they're trying to disempower you. You believe in, if you're pro-choice, or even if you're pro-life, and you believe, okay, in many circumstances, this child should come to life. Let's get that child born. And they would say, well, then you're a non-birthing parent, you're a breeder, and you're evil. You are the problem. You are a problem. Do you see how that's so much different? How they dehumanize to try and empower their source. They're basically, if this was a rape case, they'd be blaming the victim. They'd be attacking the victim. They'd be attacking you. Kind of like how Tara Reade was attacked by the far left. In fact, Bill Maher, Mr. Wonderful Bill Maher, who suddenly has come up and realized, hey, America's not that bad a place. America's a pretty great place. That's why 1.1 million people in the last 7 months, actually more, have come into the United States. Why people are sending 40,000 children by themselves to come into the United States. We must not be a really bad place. We must be pretty good. Bill Maher finally figured that out. Bill Maher is also the guy who said, well, you know, Tara Reade, her sexual assault, it doesn't matter because you have to vote for Joe Biden. Don't talk about it. Don't even think about Tara Reade and the sexual assault she made, that claim she made against Joe Biden. That's not as important as having power and making sure Joe Biden's in place. Well, again, Bill Maher, look at the greatness of what you have brought about. Your support of Joe Biden, whether or not he did in fact make the sexual assault, has led to, there's over 200 Americans right now. And as I mentioned, there is a woman, Narissa in Afghanistan, who is currently fighting for her life and she's pregnant for her unborn child and her husband. She is fighting for her life right now because of Joe Biden. Thank you, Bill Maher. And she's only one of a couple of 100 individuals that are stuck in Afghanistan, not because they made the choice, but because Joe Biden didn't give them the choice. I find it so that's interesting. So I've covered a little bit of ground there, of course, talking about, and this is all connected. There's a mindset. There is definitely a progressive mindset that seeks to dehumanize people who don't agree with them, to try and isolate you, to make it easier to cancel you, to non-person you, to take you off of the internet because they don't agree. And what they agree with, well, that's important. Maybe you think I'm wrong. Maybe you think, Mike, well, I can't agree with that. Okay, tell me why. If you think that that sexual assaults are not as important as the political figures who are in elected office, that Joe Biden, there's no reason why we should look into the allegations made by Tara Reade, because Joe Biden is a Democrat and we need to get rid of Orange Man bad? If that's what you believe, please explain to me why. If you think that Narissa in Afghanistan right now is not as important because she has an unborn child to get her back to the United States as being able to defend the right of abortions to kill babies in the United States, please explain to me why. I'm not picking on you. I'm not trying to out anyone. I'm not trying to beat you down. I'm trying to understand. I'm actually asking you for a conversation to tell me why. It's that simple. Don't tell me I'm evil. Don't tell me I'm soulless. I've heard that before. That's not an argument. Let's have a discussion. Tell me why. I'm giving you my point of view. You may not agree with it, and that's perfectly fine. But anywhere in the world, I want to hear why you think I'm wrong if you think I am. It's just that simple. And thank you, Mavis, for your comment and to let us know about that. I know it's a difficult subject, and not everyone wants to talk about it. A lot of people are afraid to talk about it because they get persecuted for it. And it's not only in talking about abortion. It's not only in talking about Afghanistan. I think you may be able to see this. I'm going to try and show this to you folks. This is an article that was on, and I know it's grayed out because it was actually removed from Reddit. But I think you can see this, and I can't really make it brighter, but someone wrote an opinion. Doctors should be allowed to give priority to vaccinated patients when resources are scarce. So this is someone who's taking the position that George Takei took. This is the position that you heard from Arnold Schwarzenegger, which we covered both of them before, that you should be punished for not doing what elitists want. And this is important because let's remember that if you follow, and I'm not making any choice about your medical health care, you are perfectly fine. If you have a question about your health care, go talk to your doctor and medical professionals to decide what is best for you. I'm not trying to make that decision for you. But I will tell you that we know that every variant of the pandemic at this time has resulted in essentially the same thing. Highly contagious, virtually not deadly. It is not a death sentence. It is not the Black Plague. It is not the Spanish flu. It is not deadly. But there are people who are saying, well, even, and mind you, you get the vaccination, you can still spread it. You can still catch it. You could still potentially die from it. That's still happening, whether you have a vaccination or not. And there are variants like the Lambda variant, which is in 44 states in the United States, which is resistant to all the vaccines. So that is a fact that exists. It came out of Peru. We've been tracking this for over 2 months now in the United States. But these people want you to be denied health care. Like George Takei said, that you should suffer and you should not be treated, and that you should pay more and you should be ostracized because you made a choice for your health care. I think that's disgusting. Mavis mentions, haven't been able to look into it myself, but someone on Tim Pool's show said the Texas bill has an exemption for women who were forced into being pregnant through illegal methods. That is true in every state that I'm aware of. See, by the way, everyone likes to say, to go back to abortion, everyone says, well, if Roe versus Wade is overturned, then no woman will ever be able to get an abortion again. That's not true. The reality is, and the true fact, and I'm not supporting it in this statement, but I want to be very clear. What happens is, if the Supreme Court were to overturn Roe versus Wade, every state law on abortion would automatically come back into effect. So state by state, certain states would allow it, certain states would not. And in your state, you could have elected leaders pass any law that they want to. It is understood, or at least I have understood it, in every state, there is an exemption for any woman who suffers from incest, rape, and the life of a woman. Now, in some states, like New York, we've had individuals like Assemblywoman Donald Pardo and the Democratic Senate Assembly majority and the state Senate majority have decided that if a woman is harmed, which is different than their life is in danger, if their life is harmed, which means they get a cold, they have a headache, they don't feel well, then they are able to have an abortion up till birth. But that's an extreme. That's what you get in a super blue state like New York or in California, where they try and find every way to convince you not to have a baby, especially when they're targeting minorities, blacks in particular, the highest groups of having abortions. They target minorities directly. So they try and give every reason and give every exemption by saying harm instead of the life of, the threat of a life of. But every state generally has that. Mavis, I'm not using all the words all the time because I've noticed they've blocked me and they don't like it when we talk about these things. And mentions, they just made a vaccination mandatory at my job. Big company, so many quitting. They just raised entry-level pay to $20 an hour and raised everyone else 10%. People are still quitting. And Jason mentions up until birth is subjective. No, it's not. No, Jason, it's not. Life is life. Birth is birth. I don't understand the subjectivity there. But I did want to speak about the vaccinations. And I want to come back to that. Because, although, please, Anne, Mavis, everyone, please, I will go where you want to go. But I do want to mention something that I think was important that happened recently. And it kind of goes in line with the same logic, that we are being dehumanized when we disagree with the progressives, that we are being punished for making decisions that they don't like, decisions of our personal lives. Now, and again, it's different when you have another life involved, but when we're talking about your own individual choice, your body, your choice, we're seeing, as we said, and this is removed from Reddit, so you can't see all of the comments where they're saying, hey, we need to punish these people. We need to charge them more, that they shouldn't receive health care. They should be the last in line. They believe what George Takei believes. You know what? And that brings us to, yes, as you mentioned, Mavis, there was a protest recently, just yesterday, in Vestal. Oops, wrong Vestal story. There was the vaccine mandate protest in Johnson City. And I was there and I covered the entire event. I was there and got photos, we've got video, we did interviews with many individuals there, and I think it's very important. You see, the thing that's really interesting about what happened in Johnson City is the news media, much like we see when people are saying, oh, you should punish people for not being vaccinated, the news media wanted to punish people for coming out and saying, hey, I don't want a mandate. Not that they don't believe in the vaccine, not that they say that they don't want people to get vaccinated. What they said is, do not require me to do that. The government doesn't have the right to micromanage my life. I get to make my own choices. And the news media, the local news media in the southern tier of New York, decided and told this group, we're not going to cover it. We're not going to send anyone out to let the public know that they did not. Mind you, this is the same news media that was happy to cover Antifa and the protests in this city, in this region. They've sent out people time and time again to cover when there was the legalization of marijuana and there was a protest. They were happy to send out people when they were storming around the southern tier, screaming about Black Lives Matter and reforming the police. They have gone to many left-wing issues and covered that. But the moment someone said, I don't agree with the government micromanaging my life, the news media said, we're not going to cover that. Now it gets interesting because what eventually did happen is I was there at 3:45, an event that started at 4 o'clock. There were 5 people there, 2 parents and 3 kids. By 4:15, over 100 individuals were there, doctors, nurses, healthcare workers, as well as the general public. I want to be very clear. I got some of them. Some of them are in the photos, some are in the video. I spoke with a doctor who requested not to have his name revealed because it could affect his job, that he may be punished for this, he may be ostracized. He is considering moving out of, taking his family and leaving New York State because he doesn't believe, and here's the interesting thing, it's not so much the question of the vaccines. He doesn't believe that New York State has the right to try and determine your health choices, that they don't have the right to force you to do what they want. That may not be in your best medical interest. And that's what this is about. You must do what the government says. And the doctor, he said, I can't work here if that's the choice. If New York State believes that they get to tell you what your health is going to be, what your health care is, that they're going to decide how you live your life and what impacts your life, he can't be here because that's against the Hippocratic Oath, in his opinion. Not a question of whether the vaccine works or not. That's a question you can ask your doctor about. I'm not telling you that it does or doesn't. That's not a conversation I'm going to have because YouTube and the rest of the internet will instantly delete the channel. No, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you his point was the government's trying to micromanage your life. And if they're willing to micromanage your health care this way, what other choice are they going to take away from you? Are they going to become like China and say, well, you only get to have one child? And then if you try to have any children more than that, well, they have to be aborted. And by the way, that's the government deciding that. Chinese government does not allow you to have more than one child unless the Chinese Communist government approves of it. And you will be punished. And women will be forced to have an abortion, whether they want it or not, in China, because the government doesn't want that. Because the government is micromanaging your life. This is what socialism leads to. This is what happens when you have the government trying to decide what you as an individual get to do. Let me come back to some of the comments. So, Jason mentions birthing does not end until a woman says it's over. I am sure that is the New York law. New York's law is a little nuanced. It's a little different. Mavis mentions, I missed a rally the other day. I picked the wrong day to go to the fair. Jason mentions, the government is overruling the opinion of your doctor. And again, let's go with that same thought. Your body, your choice. So we're seeing these progressives, the government is saying, well, the government has control over your body. And let me ask you, if you think the government is more than happy to say you must get this vaccination or this medical treatment, why are they not going to be the ones who control whether or not you get to have children or any other medical decision you might possibly have? The government's going to decide how many people are going to be trans. The government will decide that, well, we're going to convert your child. We're going to change your child's sex from male to female. We will make them trans because the proportions are off, because there aren't enough. We're going to make your child into, we're going to abort your child. Or we're going to force you to have this medication. We're going to force you to become sterile. It's not like the government hasn't done that in the past. Sterilization was something governments did in the United States. States did sterilize people in the past. They had that power. We have taken it away from them. They would do that to individuals with Down syndrome or certain mental conditions. And those mental conditions could be very flexible. They used those kind of laws very often in Jim Crow South to sterilize minorities, to prevent them from having population growth. That is a fact. These things have happened. The more power you give to the government, the more abuse you give to the government. The more the government makes the choice about what happens to you. So again, we come back to vaccine mandate. And the news media saying, we're not going to cover this. And they decided that they were going to wait. And once they saw that 200 people, doctors, nurses, healthcare workers, as well as the general public, had come together spontaneously, not because of any political organization, there wasn't one, not because of any political preference, there wasn't one. There were people there from Antifa, from BLM, from the conservative right, libertarians. I saw people there from every political faction in the country. All the ones that were in the Southern Tier were at this event all saying the same thing, that the government cannot overreach. And then, once it had become so large that the news media could not ignore it, that it had so many people who were talking about it so much on social media that they could not deny that this existed, nor could they deny that these were qualified individuals, intelligent individuals. Because we hear the left and the news media often frame this as, well, they're just disgruntled. These are just miserable people. These are just outsiders. They're the fringe. That's what you hear associated with people who say, I don't believe in a mandate. And yet, the reality is, we're talking about doctors, nurses, and healthcare workers, some of them who have been working for 30 years. And the news media wants to make them, well, now they're just disgruntled. Wait a minute, he's been a doctor for 30 years. She's been a nurse for 25 years. This one's been a healthcare worker for 15 years. They're still being doctors, nurses, and healthcare workers. They didn't give up their jobs. They don't want to stop working. They just don't want a vaccine mandate. And what about the other hundreds? Ultimately, it got up to 600 people. What about those other 600 people that are in all those other fields? What about them? They're still working. They're not disgruntled. This is a way to disencourage you. Okay, so let me get back to some of the comments here. Mavis mentions, I'm considering leaving too. New York is such a messed up state. You can choose your health when it comes to abortion, but not to the vaccine mandate. And I can buy weed and smoke it at the fair, but I can't buy flavored vape juice. Well, again, this is the government micromanaging. And as we have seen throughout history, the government never gets it right. Never. They always mess this up. Look at every time the government has stepped in to do something. When the government stepped in and said, well, we must have renewable energy, and we have to have renewable green jobs. Solyndra, what was it? It was 24 companies were picked by the Obama administration to give your tax dollars to. And of those 24 companies, 16 have failed. They no longer exist. They're out of business. Their business models don't work. 16 out of 24 companies. We're talking about billions of dollars of your money out of your pocket that was just thrown down a hole. Completely wasted. But Democrats got votes out of it. And they look good because they could say, hey, we supported green. Green, 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 even though it doesn't work, even though it doesn't make any sense, even though it cannot live up to the promises that are being made to you. But the government made a choice and said, hey, we're going to do that. And you lost money. You personally lost money. Government says you can smoke weed, but you can't smoke a flavored vape because the government says so. What's the difference? Why? What's the difference? People don't even remember now why you can't smoke, you can't have a flavored vape juice for vaping in New York State. People don't even know why that was made illegal. And by the way, it was made illegal not by you. You didn't get to vote on it. Your state legislature didn't get to vote on it. Your local legislature didn't get to vote on it. That was an edict that came down from Andrew Cuomo because his healthcare commissioner said so. Because the CDC said, oh, this is a problem. They didn't know why it was a problem. We found out what the problem was. Let me solve it for you if it's a mystery to you. If you didn't know this, if people have forgotten this. Because people put arsenic, because people who would buy aftermarket flavored vape juice, sometimes infused with THC, they were putting arsenic in it. Arsenic, rat poison. They literally put that into the vape juice. These aftermarket sellers, these non-businesses. And they would do that, and that caused some people to die. So the product itself, as it's being manufactured, is perfectly fine. And we know this. The CDC came out with the results. We know the answer. And the answer is not a problem with flavored vape juice. But the government made its choice a couple of years ago. And today, after the fact, they said, oh, we're going to protect you. Well, we found out that's not protecting us. It has absolutely nothing to do with protecting us. If you want to protect us, go after the illegal vape juice manufacturers, the people who are putting in arsenic and rat poison into the vape juice. Go after them. They were the reason why people were dying. But the manufacturing companies did nothing wrong. Why can't they sell their product again? Oh, well, we're the government. We'll get to that later. We already made a choice. You don't get to make a choice. They already made the choice for you. That's insulting, folks. The government made the choice. They were wrong. What they're doing isn't helping people. It has absolutely nothing to do with helping people, but you don't get your rights back. You don't get the freedom to make that choice anymore. If you're vaping, you no longer have a choice of products. You don't get to choose because the government made the choice for you. And again, I ask the same question because if the government's willing to say you don't get to have a choice and they're telling you have a mandate, where does it stop? When does it end? Because if they can say you don't get a choice in your vape, you don't get a choice in the vaccination, you don't get a choice in birthing and having a child, you don't get a choice in being alive. It's kind of terrifying. Mavis mentions, I think that was just an excuse. Big Tobacco was probably lining Cuomo's pockets. Well, they were involved in that decision. They helped with the CDC make a choice about that. So that was something that was involved in it. But here's the thing. The crisis has passed. Why didn't the government change it back? Why didn't our leaders, where's the members of the assembly, members of the state senate that said, we have to support this, we have to protect you? And once they found out they're not protecting you by passing this law, then where are they turning around and going, well, let's give back the rights to the human being. Let's give our rights back to our American citizens. Let's stop micromanaging their lives. Let's get government out of their way. Where are those people? The very same ones. They said, we wouldn't normally do this except we want to protect you. Well, you're not protecting me. So why do you still take away our freedoms? That's an interesting question, I think. I think it's a question that needs to be answered. Hang on a sec. Oh, come on. I love this. Are they? No, they were slamming us for a second there. They were slamming the system for a second there. Prohibited. So I wanted to bring this up because not only is the government trying to decide whether or not you get to have certain freedoms, even when they find out they're completely wrong, that everything they have decided isn't true. It doesn't make any sense. Like, hey, we have to, for 15 days, we have to isolate, which turned into lockdowns for how many months? Didn't work. Didn't stop. The surge kept on going. We kept on seeing the pandemic go over and throughout this nation. It's still here. We wore the mask. We were locked in our homes. We had Operation Crush COVID, where certain members of county executive Jason Garnar goes out and says, you have to be in solitary confinement every other day. Not officially, but officially. Using all the power of the government. We want to be like New Zealand. You don't get to go outside. Oh, and that didn't help. But the government didn't apologize for any of that. It hasn't given you back any of your freedoms. It hasn't allowed you to do anything. No, you're still suffering. And now they're mandating to moms, to children. They're making it happen, whether you like it or not. Kind of like with critical race theory, whether you like it or not. And they don't want to tell you about these things, because I remember I was over in Skinny Atlas what was it? It was Wednesday, I believe, when Bill Clinton came into Skinny Atlas so that he could raise $400,000 for Terry McAuliffe, who's running for governor in Virginia. What do either of these people have anything to do with New York State? I don't know. But they came to New York State. And you know why? Because New York State is bluer than blue. Because just by saying Democrat, saying the Democrat president wants you to give money to this guy or that guy, they will do it. And they gave over $400,000. Can you imagine how much money, that $400,000, how many people we could have gotten out of Afghanistan to this day, to this minute? How many people could we get out of Afghanistan with $400,000? Just a question. How many businesses could we help out with people who want to get vaccines or people who don't want to get vaccines? How many people could that $400,000 help? How many people could those Democrats have helped who are going to be evicted from Skinny Atlas or from the southern tier of New York with $400,000? How many people could be able to stay in their homes instead of being evicted with the $400,000 that Bill Clinton raised in one day, in one afternoon, with 20 people? And I know this for a fact because I was covering the event. There were 20 people. That's it. I actually have exclusive videos and photos of this. Bill Clinton was in Skinny Atlas for about 4 hours. He raised $400,000 for Terry McAuliffe. And I have to ask you, why hasn't Bill Clinton raised any money for those American citizens that are going to be evicted in Skinny Atlas, in Syracuse, in the southern tier of New York? Why is he not doing that? Where's Terry McAuliffe raising money for people in Virginia so that they don't have to be evicted from their homes? He was able to get almost $500,000 in one day. Half a day at that. In half a day, he was able to raise $500,000. How many people could he help? But instead, he needs it for his campaign so he can get elected in an entirely different state. He wasn't doing this in Virginia. He wasn't asking Virginia voters for the money. He came to New York. He came to New York and took money from the people in New York, in Skinny Atlas, these Democrats, these progressives that are telling you that they are there for the people, and they could have given $500,000. And I'm just picking this one subject in particular. They could have taken, in that same afternoon, these people could have given $500,000 to protect the people at risk who are being evicted, and they support this. They want to get rid of the eviction moratorium. They want to impose the eviction moratorium. They want to stop evictions from happening, but they're not willing to give you any money. They're willing to send their money to Virginia to hire another Democrat in Virginia rather than actually take care of people with evictions in New York State, in their own community. That really says something, doesn't it, folks? That they're willing to, they tell you that they care about whether or not you have a home. Bill Clinton's like, oh, all fire and brimstone. He's a wonderful Democrat. He's there to help protect the people. He's there to support blacks and minorities and women. Well, don't let Bill get around the women too much. But Bill's out there for these women. Hillary's right there. And they're like, oh, we've got to help you. And the only way we could possibly help you is to elect another Democrat, to improve the power, to increase the power of the Democratic Party and the progressives in the Democratic Party, rather than actually helping the people. And see, that's my big problem with it. I don't care that Bill Clinton was raising money. I don't care that Terry McAuliffe came from Virginia into New York State because people in Virginia wouldn't give him the money, which tells you whether or not he should actually be elected. The people in Virginia wouldn't give him $500,000 in a day, but New York would give him the money. And if they're willing to do that, then why aren't they doing the other things that they're telling us we have to do? Where's the $500,000 these people are supposed to give to the government? They have free money. Why aren't they donating that money to the IRS to lower the debt? Because they want us all to pay more taxes, right? They believe in higher taxes. So why aren't they, if they got an extra $50,000 to give to a guy from another state because a former president, somewhat disgraced former president, and his wife, who was a criminal, yeah, they were happy to give them money. Then if you have that much money laying around, why aren't you helping the actual people on these programs, you think? What is going on? Well, the system went crazy there for a second. Don't know why. Don't know why the system went crazy. Mavis mentions, Jason mentions that protecting you from the government, protecting you has been profitable for the government. Mavis mentions I did. She knew about when the vaping was stopped and why it was stopped and why, and the fact that we have not received our rights back from that. And she's still pissed about it because they legalized weed and they still won't give people back their rights in terms of vaping. Jason mentions that that the money from the Clintons is more useful than being evicted. Mavis mentions I should add, I vape and I like my flavored juice. Unfortunately, the Cuomo, I know how to get some still. All right. So, I mean, I find that interesting, folks. Maybe it's just me. Maybe you agree. Maybe you disagree. I don't know. Do you think we should trust a government whose elected leaders, individuals like Joe Biden, who promised he would not leave Afghanistan until every single American was gone? That's 2019. That's Joe Biden in 2019. He would not leave Afghanistan as long as even one American citizen was in Afghanistan. Joe Biden 2021 ran away and left hundreds of Americans, including pregnant women, left them as the Taliban and ISIS and Al-Qaeda are hunting them down with a list of names that Joe Biden gave to the Taliban, to the terrorists. They tell us that they want to get rid, they want to protect people from being evicted from their homes. 14 million Americans are facing eviction. And instead of actually coming up with a program to fix that, to resolve that, as a consequence of Democrats telling us we couldn't go outside of our homes, like Operation Crush COVID, County Executive Jason Garnar, an overreach of power that he put in place, along with many other county executives across this nation, that they locked us down, that caused people to lose their jobs, that caused businesses to close forever, that caused people to not be able to pay their rent. They caused this eviction moratorium, and rather than fix it, they kicked it down the can And now you have to deal with it. And they're saying, well, it's really bad. This is terrible. It's horrible. How bad could this be? Wish there was something we could do about that. And instead of actually trying to give you an answer, they said, oh, by the way, let me give money to this other Democrat who's also going to promise that he's going to fix this problem for you somewhere down the road. But none of them are. They're not trying to actually fix the problem. They're not trying to fix the eviction moratorium, the evictions and the eviction moratorium. They're not trying to fix that. They're trying to elect more of their own people to get more power. And I find that to be insulting. It's duplicitous. It's worse than duplicitous. It's taking advantage of people in the worst circumstances possible to use emotions against them. I promise, if you elect just one more Democrat, we're going to make your life better. After you elect yet another Democrat, and we'll make your life better. And you elect another Democrat, and we're going to make your life better. By the way, we've made several choices about your life that you'll never be able to change, that we're going to make for you, and you don't get any choice about it. We're going to make these decisions for you because, well, you elected us, so obviously you don't know enough to run your own life, so they're going to do it for you because they're smarter than you. That's what they want to sell you. They just use different words to say that. Hang on, I dropped something here. Oh, that's what I dropped. Hang on one second. Dropped some stuff. Oh, where's my phone? Oh, the phone dropped. Please, folks, don't forget, you can call in. You can call in to 607-242-1582 to leave your comments. You are more than happy to leave your comments like you see Mavis and Jason and Ann and Vic have done on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, DLive. You can tell me why you agree or you disagree. I'm only providing you the evidence. I'm only telling you about what's going on. You can tell me anything you wish. You can say you agree, you disagree, you don't think it's a big deal. It's up to you. And by the way, for the people who are wondering where I get that number, looking at the Hill, where we see that these people came in, and I can tell you from speaking with other news media sources in Skinny Atlas and from Syracuse at the time, at the event, per person, $50,000, it was around, actually in some cases more than $50,000 per person. 20 people, just 20 people, raised $400,000. $400,000 in one afternoon. And these people, while they're making decisions about your life, they're deciding whether or not you must take medication because the government said so. They're deciding whether or not you get to be able to have a child or not. They get to decide what job you will work at. They get to decide how much money you get to keep from your job. These same people don't care. They don't actually care enough to be involved to actually make your life better. They just want to go where the money is and take your money. It's insulting. It's insulting. And it's also something interesting because when I was there in Skinny Atlas, I learned from several sources that there are going to be Afghan refugees that are going to be coming into New York State. It is estimated that there could be as many as 2,000, possibly more, Afghan refugees that are currently in Fort Hood that will be coming into New York State. Excuse me. At least it's estimated 2,000. And they're going to be going to various counties. Approximately 200 Afghan refugees will be going to Onondaga County in New York State. Here's a question that I asked of Governor Hochul, Anthony Delgado, County Exec Garnar, and Assemblywoman Lepardo. How many of these people have been vetted? How many have actually been vetted? How many of them are interpreters who have actually worked with American citizens and Americans in Afghanistan? How many of them are just people that were part of a crowd? Thousands, tens of thousands of people that were part of a crowd that we took out of Afghanistan because they didn't want to stay there. And we don't know how many Americans were left behind to take them first. And I'm not blaming them, but I am questioning, because in these tens of thousands, we have seen infiltrators from ISIS and Al Qaeda and the Taliban have infiltrated refugees. We've seen this throughout all of Europe. Speak to anyone in the United Kingdom. Speak to people in Sweden. Speak to the people in Germany and France. They have seen that along with the refugees, there are infiltrators of these various terrorist groups that have come into the United States or into other countries and have caused problems, that they have committed attacks. And we don't know who these people are. As far as I can tell, no one knows who all of these people are. No one knows what their background is. And they're going to be sent into your community because the local leaders, Governor Hochul, the New York State Assembly, the New York State Senate, have already made the decision that, again, you don't get a choice in your life. You're going to get these refugees, and it doesn't matter if they might be members of ISIS or Al Qaeda. You don't get to have a choice about it. They're not even going to tell you where these people are going. They're just going to show up one day. You don't get to know about it. That's kind of terrifying. But they're telling you that they're going to protect you, that they're doing this for you. This is to help you out. That's why they give money to people in other states to run elections and win in other states for their political power. Yeah, that's for your benefit. Terry McAuliffe in Virginia becoming governor, that's in your best interest. That helps people in New York State, people in California and Wisconsin. You're going to be better off. People in Texas, you're going to be better off. Give the money to Terry McAuliffe. Why? He's in Virginia. What's that got to do with any other state? How is that going to improve people's lives? How is Terry McAuliffe being elected and giving more power to Democrats? How is that going to help you with an eviction crisis that the Democrats ignored for all of 2021 and kicked down the road and didn't do anything about it? They didn't give you a single solution. They didn't fix the problem. It's the same Democrats that are trying to control your bodies, that are trying to control your jobs, where you work, how you work. But yet, electing that one guy, Terry McAuliffe, well, that's going to make your life so much better. That's going to improve things for you. We're going to elect one Democrat in one state that's not your state, in an entirely different state. But that's going to make your life better. Give him more money. Does that make sense, folks? I mean, you tell me, does that make sense? Or let me ask you this. Do you think the $400,000 that Bill Clinton was able to raise in one afternoon might have been better used to help people in New York State to keep their apartments and their homes and their houses? That's a serious question. Which one do you think is better? Jason mentions that mom and pop landlords losing their property lines the pockets of the Democratic and progressive donors. And I agree with you. You know, I do, in fact, agree with you. Hang on a second. I'm writing a comment here for you folks so that we can get an answer here. Hang on a second, folks. There we go. Just wanted to put up a comment there. Do you think that Bill Clinton should have raised $400,000 for Terry McAuliffe or New Yorkers facing eviction? It's a comment. It's a question. You can call in to 607-242-1582 and you can tell me your answer that way. Or you can just comment on Facebook, Twitter, DLive. and let us read what your comment is. Either way, I'm very happy. But I want you to tell me, which one do you think is more important? Getting a guy elected for in Virginia, a Democrat in Virginia, is that more important? Or is it more important to help the people in New York that may be evicted? Your friends, your neighbors, your family members. Which one do you think is more important? It's just a question. You can tell me whatever you think about that. But, he's a very special kind of guy because he thought that he's a very big fan of Kamala Harris. Terry McAuliffe is a huge fan of Kamala Harris. He thinks she was the best. You know what he hasn't mentioned? Where is Kamala Harris right now? Let me say it again. She's supposed to be protecting our border, our southern border. 1.1 million people, more than 1.1 million people have crossed our border since the day that Kamala Harris has been put in charge of protecting our southern border. I think Terry McAuliffe doesn't know he's a very bad choice of character. He's promoting her and she can't even do the job. He's like, she's great. She can do the job. Apparently not. She's not doing the job. And by the way, Terry McAuliffe also believes in defunding the police, which is part of the reason why he came to New York State, because he wants to defund the police. He supports that idea. He takes funding from the very people who are actually defunding the police. And as he said, I will increase funding for community policing and improve training and body-worn programs. Yeah, community policing. He wants to have social workers go out. In fact, he wants to do something even better. I believe that he wants to do what we see in California. They want to pay criminals for not shooting people. I don't even know what to call this, folks. This is so insane. This is so stupid. California believes, San Francisco believes that the best way to lower crime, to cut their astronomically increasing homicide rate, is to pay criminals. And they have picked out 10 people from something that is called the Dream Keeper Fellowship Program. This is their test. And these people might be victims, or they might be the aggressors, the shooters. And they want to stop them from shooting people. You're going to pay 10 people who may or may not go out and shoot people, may or may not have already gone out and shot people. They want to use taxpayer dollars to pay them $300 a month on top of any other help they may be getting from the government. Any of the extra money that the government may be giving them, they're going to give them an extra $300 on top of that just to not commit a crime, to commit a horrible, heinous crime of murder. Please don't murder anyone. You didn't murder anyone today, did you? No, honest to God, I didn't. Here's $300. This is the plan. This is how they're going to make you safer. This is the kind of thing that Terry McAuliffe is supporting. This is community policing, where the government is turning around and saying, give me your tax dollars so that we can pay this criminal not to commit crimes, not to commit the most heinous of crimes of killing other human beings. Because it doesn't matter that it's morally wrong. It doesn't matter that this is something that we have dozens of laws against. No. We have to pay people not to kill other people. That's community policing. And they get an extra $200 a month if they actually hit the targets. So like they go to school, or more importantly, if they're acting as a mediator in their community. I want you to think about that. San Francisco, these are California progressives, the most progressive capital in the nation. The only place being less progressive, the second most progressive, would be New York State. So expect this to be offered as a suggestion in New York State by the Lieutenant Governor, Benjamin. He's probably going to come up with this because he supports defunding the police. And this is their idea. They're going to take $500 from you, from your taxes. They're taking this from your pocket. They're going to take $500 from you. They're going to give it to a criminal and say, pretty please, do not shoot anyone this month. And by the way, go out and tell people how great Democrats are and how great this program is. You get paid not to shoot people. This is their idea. And they think this will lower crime. No police, just paying people. You know what I would call that? Extortion. That is an extortion. That is coercion. That is intimidation. That is getting money by threat. I will be violent unless you give me money. Give me your money. That's what muggers say. Let's think about that. That's what muggers say, folks. They say, give me your money or I will be violent. And San Francisco has said, please don't be violent. Here's our money. Here's our tax money. Here's your money. That's a mugging. And the funny part is, it's a mugging that San Francisco volunteered for. They said, you might want to mug me one day. Here's our money. It's kind of no one, and it's just right in line with the Biden administration. It's right in line with the Biden administration. They said, they talked to the Taliban and they said, please don't attack us while we're running away from you. We will pay you money. We will give you foreign aid. Be nice to us while we're in America. Oh, what about the Americans once you're gone? What about the Americans you leave behind? Oh, well, you can do whatever you want with them. We didn't make a deal for those people. You can capture them all day long. ISIS can go out and kill them all day long. They can go to Narissa, a pregnant mom out of California who's in there with her family. You can go kill her. Here's her name on a list. But everyone else that we get out, they're going to meet their names. Don't worry about it. Those people we do get out, just be nice to those people. We don't care about anyone who's there after August 31st. They're not important. I tell you, progressives are some of the most callous people I've ever seen in my life. I mean, they are downright callous. And if you think I'm wrong, please call in 607-242-1582. I will be happy to explain why I believe progressives are some of the most callous, uncaring people that I have ever seen in terms of their politics. They may be grandmothers and dads, and I'm not saying they're not nice people. In terms of their politics, they are absolutely callous. And their politics are killing people. They're killing Americans. They are destroying America. And I am more than happy to have that conversation. If you think I'm wrong, please let me know. Ann mentions that absolutely not. The Clintons are political narcissists, and they don't actually care about anyone else. That's why Bill Clinton didn't raise up $400,000 to help any of the people facing eviction in Skinny Atlas or Central New York, in Syracuse, in the Southern Tier region, in Central New York. He didn't raise a dime to help anyone who's facing eviction. No, he raised it for someone in Virginia. A guy in Virginia who agrees with California and Governor Newsom to be able to pay criminals to not do crimes, to agree to extortion. It's incredible. Jason mentions a better idea would be to arm them with knives. I heard it's more more normal. I think, Jason, you're mentioning Micaiah Bryant. And if for those who may not recall, over this spring, Micaiah Bryant was a 15-year-old woman, a 15-year-old girl, who got into a knife fight. Well, it's not even a knife fight. She had a knife, and she was going to stab a 16-year-old woman, who also happened to be, both women are black. A police officer showed up, saw her. He had 10 seconds, literally, based on video cam footage. He arrived on the scene, and 10 seconds later, he had a black woman in mid-swing with a knife trying to kill another black woman. The officer pulled out his firearm and he killed Ma'Khia Bryant, the criminal attempting to commit murder. And the answer from the Democrats were knife fights are normal. Who hasn't been in a knife fight? If you think I am kidding here, Valerie Jarrett, who worked in the Obama administration, worked directly under President Obama. Valerie Jarrett herself was promoting and saying, how dare the police stop these kids from knife fighting? There were several activists, high up political progressive activists, who said knife fighting is normal. Look it up. We have the video. We've done the coverage on it. This is what progressives believe. It's perfectly fine for black people to knife each other to death. How dare you not let them kill each other? How dare you? Maybe we should have paid her $500 not to stab someone. Do you think that might have worked? It's crazy. Again, if you think I'm wrong, I want to hear what you have to say about this. But this is just crazy. I do not understand this. And these are funds that are coming from your pocket. And you may say, well, $500 a month, it's not a big deal. Who cares about that? It's not just $500 a month. The Dreamkeeper Initiative, which was created in San Francisco, this thing has over $14 million. They're using $14 million. They defunded the San Francisco, the police. Was it San Francisco that had $120 million that they took away from the budget? They're taking $14 million and they're going to be training and developing programs, another $15 million for the community health and wellness, and $10 million for housing security. Wait a minute. So there's $15 million that's supposed to be spent on community health and black employment. And this is insane. So $500, this is their pilot program. They're going to spend $15 million, ideally, to tell people, don't be a criminal, here's $500. It's crazy. By the way, there's only 5% of San Francisco that's black. But they want to spend $10 million to help black people who are being evicted, not the 95% of San Francisco that isn't black. They get nothing extra. They still have to deal with the same eviction crisis that everyone else in the country is dealing with. But if you happen to be black and you happen to be in San Francisco and you own a home, which means you're probably a millionaire. Have you seen the housing prices for San Francisco? You're probably a millionaire. And if you're a millionaire and you're in San Francisco, you own a home and you're losing your home, they have $10 million that they will help to pay your mortgage because you're black. If you happen to be white, if you happen to be the other 95% of San Francisco, well, you're screwed. It's kind of like Bill Clinton. They're not going to do a thing for you, but they'll tell you to vote Democrat. Dow mentions, every time the Clintons and the Clinton Foundation raise money, it never seems to arrive at its advertised target because it's never meant to. Because they're not there to fix anything. The Clinton Foundation is a nonprofit organization that spends 80% of its money, the 80% of the money they get from you and me, oh, and also from the Middle East, countries like Qatar, Yemen, the money they get from overseas in countries where they throw gays off of roofs of buildings and they stone women to death for being able to read. This is where the Clinton Foundation gets its money. Hundreds of millions of dollars they get from these countries that would kill Hillary Clinton because she can read. They would kill and stone, not Bill Clinton, but all the women Bill Clinton had sex with while he was married. Yeah, so their money, it never gets to the actual, and 80% of the money they get from these foreign nations, instead, the Clinton Foundation pays it out to Hillary and Bill Clinton, and their daughter, Chelsea. 80% of the money. And these are the people that are coming into New York State to raise money for someone in Virginia so that they cannot fix any of the problems. But they can tell you that if you vote Democrat, the problems will go away. Except I have never seen every time, and this is true for Republicans too, when they promise you, we're going to fix the problems. No, they don't. I've never seen Democrats fix the problems. Obama was in office. How many problems did he fix? He had 12 years. He had 8 years. How many problems did he fix? I mean, I'm being serious. What did he fix? He had BLM in his office. Is black on black crime lower? In fact, it's higher. It just doesn't make any sense. Okay, so yes, and the Clinton Foundation had Haiti is a great example, and if you don't believe, just look it up. Bill Clinton, the Clinton Foundation, Haiti donations, and you'll see 80% of the money never went to the Haitians, did not help them at all. They did almost nothing for the people who were suffering from the earthquakes in Haiti, but Bill Clinton got paid, Chelsea Clinton got paid, Hillary Clinton got paid. People in Haiti, they got screwed. Jason mentions, I thought Biden conclusively put that debate to rest. White people are not poor. Oh, yeah. Well, that was one of his statements at one of his events. Yeah, I remember. Let's see, folks. So, I mean, it drives me insane when I get to see these things. And let me ask, have you heard about these things? Did you hear about the vaccine mandates? Did you hear that there were doctors and nurses and healthcare workers that were out among the public in Johnson City, New York? That it was doctors and nurses who said they need to protect your health choices, and that's why they were protesting? Or did you hear that Governor Hochul said, I'm helping you? Did you hear that Bill Clinton raised $400,000 for Terry McAuliffe in his race in Virginia? Or did you hear about Bill Clinton ever raising money and actually giving the money to people who are going to be evicted in New York State? Have you heard anyone have this discussion? Is there anywhere else on the internet where people are saying that? Let me be more specific. Is there anyone on the left, the progressives, who are having this honest conversation and showing you the evidence? Is there anyone who's doing that? Because if they're not, they're hiding the truth from you. They're hiding the consequences of their actions. They are blinding your eyes. They're giving you the promise and hiding the truth. It's kind of like Obama's saying, we need to transform America. And he left out, transform it to what? What are the progressives trying to transform America into? Because it certainly seems like they want to transform it into something like the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party. They want to transform it into something like North Korea or Venezuela or Cuba. Some of the most failed countries in the world. And I keep saying this, but let me say it again. And if you disagree, you can call on 607-242-1582. If you dispute any of the evidence that I am providing, if you think the left-leaning sources that I use 90% of the time are somehow not valid, please let me know. If you think I am misunderstanding the facts and coming to the wrong conclusion, please let me know. I'm not going to beat up on you. I want to have that conversation from anywhere in the world. If you're in the United Kingdom and you think critical race theory is the right choice for the United Kingdom, let's have that conversation. If you're in New York State and you think that that the government should choose your health care, that the government should make a decision about how you are going to be, your health decisions, all of them are going to be made by some government, some bureaucrat over in Albany, please tell me why. Let me hear that argument. If you think that our elected leaders should spend more time getting money to elect even more of their friends and associates and have more of their people elected rather than actually solve the problems that they promised you they had a solution for, Please, I want to hear it. I want to hear that argument. And it's always funny because I've almost never heard people actually have that argument. Instead, what I've heard is some of the biggest progressives out there, they like to change the argument. They want to talk about something else. So if you talk about, say, healthcare mandates, they're going to tell you, well, it's not so bad. Look, New Zealand, they shut down their entire country. They put the entire country of New Zealand on lockdown because of COVID. And by the way, New Zealand, we need to do more like New Zealand because New Zealand has no guns. People can't have firearms in New Zealand. Well, let me answer you. They locked down a country of millions of people because one person had COVID. Didn't die. One person had COVID. And they locked down an entire country. How many people are suffering right now because of that? How many people are going through mental health issues because of it? How many people are not able to take care of their medical needs? They might have cancer treatments they want to try and take care of. They might be trying to have babies. What about those people? They're being affected by this lockdown too. And if you want to tell me that New Zealand is some wonderkind of progressive ideology, I want to remind you that it was in New Zealand, they got rid of all the guns. Got rid of all the guns. People could not own guns. So a terrorist went out and stabbed people anyway. That's right, ISIS. Members of ISIS. I don't know this guy's name and I don't care. He was shot by the police, but this 32-year-old ISIS member who slipped into New Zealand because of the refugees, as I understand it, he went out and he stabbed 5 people. Killed 2 of them. 3 people are fighting for their lives at this moment. That happened. And it was reported today, happened yesterday. So, let me think. The guns, you got to get rid of the guns. ISIS used a knife. Killed 5 people, attacked 5 people, killed 2. He used a knife. New Zealand's policy didn't save anyone. They didn't stop terrorism. Lockdowns didn't stop terrorism. They have a lockdown in New Zealand right now. This terrorist got out and decided to stab 5 people, even though there was a lockdown, even though there are no guns. And it took guns to actually stop him. Imagine if there was just one person who was armed, one civilian who kept their firearm and was able to stop this guy from stabbing 5 different people. And why is ISIS doing this? Why is ISIS suddenly going around and killing more and more people? Because the United States failed. Because the United States lost to the Taliban. And so all around the world, we see in Yemen, the Houthis are increasing their fighting, their attacks, their suicidal terrorist tactics. They're increasing it. Why? Because the Taliban won, so why can't they? We see Iran is running around helping to increase the net terror. They are giving rockets to Yemen and the Houthis and the terrorists there. Why? Because the United States lost. Mavis mentions, vote blue no matter who and don't actually question anything. Well, that's what, remember, as we showed you earlier, that's what Bill Maher said. He said it didn't matter if Joe Biden actually did. In fact, it doesn't matter if Democrats, this is Bill Maher who said this. This was in 2020, May of 2020. We did the show on this. We actually have the video of him speaking on this, that he said, it doesn't matter. It was reported by the New York Post. It doesn't matter if Tara Reade was the victim of sexual abuse by Joe Biden. Democrats need to be elected. It doesn't matter if Democrats do this, they need to be elected. That's Bill Maher with his national promotion telling you that. How many people were telling, right now, as a matter of fact, right now, Andrew Cuomo has $18.5 million that he is able to use any way that he wants to, that he is using to blackmail Democrats and progressives to do what he wants, even though he's no longer governor, but they want to be reelected. Because it doesn't matter. They're Democrats. They're progressives. Winning is more important than anything else. Again, this is why Clinton was in Skinny Atlas. This is why Terry Olive came to New York. They could have gone to Ohio. They could have gone to Pennsylvania. They could have gone to California. They could have gone to Texas. They could have stayed in Virginia. But no. They came to New York, the bluest of the blue states, because they knew that if they came to Skinny Atlas and said, hey, guess what? Bill Clinton, I'm a Democrat. I'm telling you to vote for another Democrat. Give that Democrat money so he will get elected. They did so. It's kind of like Newsom. We see Governor Newsom in California. He's about to be recalled. And they're fighting that. They're calling in all of their buddies to say, hey, vote for Newsom. Vote for Newsom. He only killed a couple of nursing home patients. He wasn't nearly as bad as Governor Whitmer. He wasn't nearly as bad as Andrew Cuomo. He killed far less people. He's helping to pay criminals $500 for not committing crimes. He's giving the vote to illegal aliens so that they can vote in your election so your vote no longer matters. Re-elect Governor Newsom. Consequences matter, folks. And everything I've said, I can back up with news articles, and we'll see links about many of the things we're talking about right now. I will show you the links, the news articles. Almost every single one of them is going to be from the left-leaning sources. These are facts. The internet overlords may not like it. Some of the international leaders of governments may not like it, but these are the facts. And one of the facts is Joe Biden has empowered and encouraged ISIS to go to New Zealand and to stab people there. That they have encouraged the Houthis, the terrorists in Yemen, to use rockets to kill people in Yemen because of what Joe Biden did. Because they know, just like you know today, that there is a pregnant woman and a pregnant American who is in Afghanistan being hunted by the Taliban at this moment, and they know that Joe Biden isn't going to do anything. And if Joe Biden isn't going to help a pregnant California mother, if he's not going to help her, he is absolutely not going to help the people of New Zealand as ISIS comes down and attacks their people. He is absolutely not going to help the people of Yemen as Iran helps drop bombs on those people. He is not going to help the United Kingdom when they have to deal with these infiltrators who slipped in as Afghan refugees, which they have caught several people already, who are going to be there to try and kill people, or the people who slipped into into France. He's not even going to help other American citizens. And you may want to tell me, well, Joe Biden's great, he doesn't have mean tweets. Yeah, he doesn't have mean tweets. He also doesn't have a mind. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And no one in the world is afraid of him. No one in the world is fearing him. And the global instability is going up and up. And in fact, it is right now, we see Iran is betting on the fact that Joe Biden is so desperate to cover up the fact that he has completely failed at every step of the way, that he so desperately needs a win, that he's going to release all the sanctions against Iran. That Iran is betting. Raisi, the prime minister of Iran, is betting that the United States is so desperate for a win that they want to have the Iran nuclear deal. And they are willing to release all of the sanctions, 529 sanctions against Iran, so that they can once again do exactly what they did in January of 2016, as then Secretary John Kerry told us. They funded global terror around the world, and they killed people around the world with the money that the United States provided to them. That is a fact. If there's any question about that, I am happy to show you the article from the New York Times and the Washington Post, where John Kerry himself directly tells the American people that because of the Iran nuclear deal, the United States helped fund global terror through Iran. And Iran knows that Joe Biden, who was part of the administration when they first got the deal, is so desperate for a win that they're going to do it again. Because this is, according to the Jerusalem Post, this is the United States trying to play hardball. What they said is, this is U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, who is responding to the fact that Iran already said in April and in June, has already told the United States, screw you. We've been trying to make a deal with Iran since April of 2021 under the Biden administration. And the only thing that Iran keeps saying is get rid of all the sanctions. Get rid of all the sanctions. And the Biden administration has been afraid to say yes. And so Anthony Blinken says, we can't wait forever. The United States has to do something. At some point, the nuclear advances will be such as to make a return to the Iran nuclear deal much less viable to the U.S. than it would be otherwise. So we're prepared to be patient, but let's not drag this on for too long, because at some point we'll have to reach a different conclusion. Somewhere down the road, Joe Biden might make a decision to say, we don't care. He might, maybe, kind of, sort of. Except, when would that be? Jerusalem Post asks, when would this be? When would the United States say, it's been too long? And instead of answering the question, Secretary of State Blinken just dodged it. He avoided it. Said, well, we have to be realistic about these things. It's going to happen. They're going to do it or else. And you didn't read this in any United States newspaper. Not one newspaper in America is telling you that right now the United States is begging Iran to do the Iran nuclear deal. They are begging them to come to the table. They are begging them to make this deal because Joe Biden needs to look good politically, because he wants to win the midterm elections of 2022. Not that he's going to be in office in 2023. He's not. Kamala Harris will. But he needs to win the midterm elections to have any hope for Kamala Harris to win in 2024. And so he's just doing politics. He doesn't care that that means there will be more global terror in the world. He's already made more global terror in the world. He gave 600,000 rifles. He gave 600,000 small arms, assault weapons, literal machine guns. He gave tanks. He gave mortars and missiles to the Taliban. He doesn't care about increasing global terror. Joe Biden has already increased global terror in the world. He's willing to do anything to look good. And he's going to tell you, well, there's no choice. We have to do that. It's the only choice that exists. There's no other choice. You have to do it because I'm Joe Biden and I'm in charge of the government and I'm going to micromanage your life. Just like the vaccine mandates, just like lockdowns, just like getting rid of the Second Amendment, just like the fact that they're not doing anything on the eviction crisis. All they're doing is trying to elect more and more Democrats. They're not trying to fix anything. And if you think I'm wrong, because you might, tell me why. And this is why we see that abortion is something they're fighting for. They're fighting to kill babies. These are where the priorities are with the progressives right now. The priorities of the progressives today is to arm terrorists around the world, to fund terrorism around the world, to turn a blind eye to the consequence of that, which is that terrorists are killing people around the world with the money and weapons that they have provided, that these progressives have given to the terrorists in the world. That they want to suppress your freedom of choice, to deny you the ability to defend yourself, that they will take more of your money and spend it on more of their friends so long as they get elected and they get more power. And I've just explained it for 2 hours on how they're doing that. And I'm showing you the evidence, state in article after article after article. And it's just getting worse and worse. It's just getting worse and worse. And if you tell me, well, Mike, no, you misunderstand, because the Taliban, at least the Taliban isn't as bad as ISIS. He had no way of knowing that this was the same thing. ISIS is the ones who killed the Americans and are hunting down Americans in Afghanistan. So right there, you're wrong, Mike. See, you've got the wrong idea. You misunderstand the information that's out there. Okay. Yeah. The Times of India, Pakistan intelligence chief visits to Kabul affirms Taliban is the ISIS puppet. And the Pentagon knows it. And the Pentagon knows that the Taliban is ISIS. There is no difference. September 5th, 2021. International newspaper. Did you see that in the news? Did the New York Times tell you that? How about Newsweek? Did they tell you what's going on? I bet you CNN never mentioned that to you. You might wonder why. Because they want you to think it's 3 different groups. They want you to think that all these terrorists are entirely different. And yes, they have their fights about all their, whatever their stupidity is. Their different radical, fanatical ideas of Islam and religion. Yes, they have their fights. But quite honestly, they're all the same groups when it comes to everyone else. They want to kill Americans, progressives as well as anyone else. They want to kill the British, progressives as well as anyone else. And same thing in French, and the Germans, and the Australians, and the Canadians, and even in New Zealand. I mean, you're talking about the bottom of the world. Almost no one is there. No one is around. And they're there in the end of the world. And they have ISIS members running around stabbing people to death. Jason mentions, only terror in the world, according to the left, is the terror of being white. Yeah, critical race theory. How many times have you heard Democrats tell you, oh, the biggest threat in America, and progressives, what's the thing that progressives say? The biggest threat to America are white people. That's critical race theory. This is what they're teaching your kids in schools right now. This is what they are teaching 8-year-olds. That the biggest threat to your life right now is being white. Meanwhile, Joe Biden, an old, rich, white male who controls the Democratic Party, he's a supposed leader, is giving weapons of mass destruction and just firearms in general to the Taliban so that they can kill everyone. That he is giving money to ISIS and the Taliban and Iran to increase the global terror in the world. Well, I don't think that's what, Jason, I don't think that's what they meant by the terror of white people. But you know what? If you said the terror of white progressives, I'd say progressives in general, then yeah, it's true. That's the greatest terror in the world. I think they're the most dangerous people we've ever seen. By their actions, their leadership. Joe Bob down on the corner may call himself a progressive. Sure you are, until it actually counts. Because Joe Biden doesn't care. Joe Biden doesn't care, and the progressives don't care. Cory Bush didn't care if any progressive or anyone else for that matter, black, white, any other color, she didn't care about whether or not you'd be kicked out of your house until she could get a vote for it, until it was a problem that Cori Bush had nothing to say about it until it became a problem where she could raise money and get votes. Then she cared. Then she said, we're going to try and fix this. She still hasn't come up with a solution. She just wants to tell you that she's going to fix it. It's kind of like what we see with the vaccine mandates. Because the progressives in the news media didn't want to cover this. They told you, and you've heard, how many times have you heard people say that the protesters, people who protest the vaccine mandates, they're evil, they're terrible, they're fringe, they don't know what they're talking about? How many people in the news media have told you that they are doctors, that they are nurses, that they work in your communities, that they're doing this, that they are fighting this fight about the vaccine mandates to be able to protect you and your health care so that you can make choices for yourself? That you wouldn't be able to make choices for yourself if the government gets to decide everything for you. How many people in the news told you that? When they described not just the vaccine mandate protests in Johnson City or the vaccine mandate protests in France and in Australia and in England and in Canada. When did you even know that there were protests against the vaccine mandates and the vaccine passports in France, the United Kingdom, Australia, and Canada? Did you know that? All within the last week? How many people have even heard about the protests that happened in Johnson City, where over 600 people, literally the largest spontaneous crowd of people I have ever seen, come together for an event that is not political? This was not political. Democrats, progressives, libertarians, and Republicans were all together. They all said this. How many times have you ever seen that? How many people in the news media told you that it wasn't just a bunch of right-wing conservatives that were at this protest and all the protests in the rest of the world? Whether you're in France or Australia or Canada, it's everybody. It's the left, the right, and independents are all coming together to say the same thing. In Johnson City, New York, it was the left, the right, and the independents that all came together spontaneously. 600 people, more than 600 people, to be honest. More than 600 people came together to say, hey, this isn't right. And who else in the media told you that? Or did they let you think that they were just a bunch of disgruntled workers and that they were all right-wing activists? Which message did the news media tell you? Mavis mentions, thank God Union Endicott, which is a local school district in our region in the southern tier of New York, thank God Union Endicott School District hired a diversity officer to teach my children to hate themselves. Think about it, folks. This is how critical race theory works. Because they'll tell you, they're not teaching critical race theory. They just hired a diversity officer to make sure that people are diverse. Kind of like, 3 weeks ago? 4 weeks ago, I covered the story that a black woman was told her kids were being segregated. Her kids were segregated because the principal said, well, black kids can't be with white kids because critical race theory. And what happens when Union Endicott, when we get to see that diversity coach, that diversity officer, who is a progressive, I am absolutely sure, because I can't imagine even a libertarian, I can't imagine a conservative saying we need to have segregation. Only progressives are offering this. And when that progressive diversity officer comes out and tells the kids and the parents of Union Endicott School, well, we have to separate the black kids from the white kids, the Hispanic kids from the white kids, because the white kids are racist, so segregation How many people are going to stand up and say, no, that's racist? We already fought that fight. That fight was being fought in the 50s and the 60s. Segregation is racist. So let's not go backwards in time, because that's where the progressives are taking us. Yeah, and they're telling us that the Taliban are freedom fighters. No, Jason, the Taliban aren't freedom fighters. The Taliban are our independent allies in Afghanistan, according to Jen Psaki of the press secretary for the president for the White House. Oh, thank you, Mavis. I was about to, I was about to light it. But yeah, folks, think about that. Union Endicott has hired a diversity coach so that parents don't need to worry about teaching their kids about human beings, how to be a good moral person. That's no longer important. The government's going to do that for you. The government is going to teach you, is going to teach your kids how to be a good moral person by segregating them. They're going to teach them segregation, one of the worst racist policies from Jim Crow South that you could possibly imagine. That's how they're going to help their kids. They're going to help your kids be good moral people by turning them into segregationist racists. And the government's going to take away your problems about worrying about your health care, because they're going to decide what the health care is for you. Because you don't need to make those decisions. You're not smart enough to make those decisions. Only the government can make those decisions. Who agrees with this? Who actually agrees with these insane ideas? Who's even going to hear these ideas? Because right now, the news media is telling you, and the entertainers are telling you, go watch football. Go watch Dancing with the Stars. Go watch Naked and Afraid. Go watch anything than actually paying attention to the news. Don't ask Afghanistan. Afghanistan, forget about it. Who's heard about Afghanistan? You don't need to know that there are pregnant Americans that are stuck in Afghanistan right now being hunted bound by ISIS, and that Joe Biden and the Democrats don't care and they aren't doing anything to save her. That's not important. Go watch football. Go watch Naked and Afraid. No. Don't worry about the fact that Democrats are promising that they're going to fix the eviction crisis right after they get $400,000 to a Democrat in an entirely different state and tell you have to vote Democrat. And then they'll figure out the answer to the solution after they get more power. Oh, you don't have to think about protecting yourself. You don't need a gun. You don't need to protect yourself. The government will protect you. Just like they're going to protect that woman in Afghanistan. Just like they're going to protect you from someone coming across the border, even though 1.1 million people have already done that. Even though we've seen that ISIS is infiltrating into countries as refugees and stabbing people like they did in New Zealand. And by the way, when was the last time you heard anyone besides this channel talk about the southern border? When was the last time you got an update from the major news media telling you what's happening in the southern border? When was the last time they told you that it was 1.2 million people, over 50,000 children have crossed into the United States illegally? When was the last time you heard them tell you that? That's the facts, but when was the last time they told you that? They're not telling you that. Oh, well, maybe I'm wrong. Hang on. Mavis mentions WBNG did a story about the diversity officer a few weeks ago. His name is Chris Murdoch. He seems pretty far left from what I've been able to find. I guarantee you that Chris Murdoch is an absolute progressive. It is impossible, in my opinion, that you can be a segregationist, which is diversity under critical race theory. It is impossible to be a segregationist and not be on the political left. that critical race theory requires you to be a progressive, to believe in critical reasoning and ideology, and that's the only way you could be. He's not a conservative, I can tell you that. He's not a Republican, absolutely not. He's not a libertarian. That doesn't leave much room. And I know many, many classical Democrats and classical liberals, and they don't agree with segregation. The only people I know that agree with segregation generally are going to be rich, white progressives. Although they don't always have to be rich. But those are the people who are screaming, along with some black progressives like BLM and Antifa, Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, the shareholders of Broome County, Citizen Action. They're the only ones who are saying that we need to segregate. They're the only ones who are saying that we have to teach kids racism. They're the only ones. Well, you know what, Mavis? Mavis mentions that, well, we would believe he's a progressive based on his ideology, but you can't find it. Mavis, let me mention, there should never be any way for someone, if you don't know a teacher or a principal or a professor in college, you shouldn't be able to tell what their political politics are. You shouldn't know what their political preferences are. You shouldn't know how they vote. And they should never tell you that, because that's not their job. That's not what they're there for. They're not there to tell you about politics unless you're actually taking a course in, say, progressivism in college. If you're trying to learn about Marxism in college. And even then, you don't need to know it, because anyone can teach that material. You don't have to believe it to teach it. You just need to understand it. But the fact is, we don't have people who just understand it. They want to convert. What was that story in California? A teacher, it was a California teacher who admitted he's a progressive, and he told his students, or he told people on social media, he had 180 days to indoctrinate children and to turn them into progressives. And here we are, and that was in California. And here we are in New York State. We have a diversity officer, someone there to increase the amount of segregation and racism in our schools amongst children. And do you think America is going to be better because of this? Exactly. Yeah, exactly. As you said, Mavis, who knew? When I went to school, I can't think of a single teacher or professor I had in my lifetime that I knew what their political beliefs were. That was back in the 70s, 80s, into the 90s. Didn't know what any of their political beliefs were, because it had nothing to do with the material they taught me. It has nothing to do with chemistry. It has nothing to do with math. It has nothing to do with learning how to write English. It has nothing to do with philosophy. That's not part of the curriculum. It's not necessary to know that unless they're trying to indoctrinate you. If you know, and I would say this about someone on the right just as fast, if you know the political preferences of a teacher, then that person is indoctrinating those students. They are not teaching them. They are indoctrinating them. Because there is nothing that needs to be taught to a mind, to be taught to someone, that requires them to understand, to follow your political ideology. Yes, I agree, Jason, that every diversity officer in every company should all be fired. I don't care who they are. Diversity officers, they're counterproductive. Critical race theory is counterproductive to reducing yes, there is some racism that exists in the United States. But let's take a look, folks. I've been around 53 years. You cannot say with any honesty and with a straight face and say that the racism that might exist today, the small amounts of it that exist today, are as bad as or worse than in the 1970s. You cannot say that. That is a lie. You can't say that the racism today is worse than in the 80s or the 90s or the early 2000s. That is a lie. Straight up, that's a lie. And we are taking steps backwards to get to those levels, to increase the racism, because it's all about politics. It is great for the progressives that the more problems you have, the more they can promise without ever having to do anything. Because they can always blame, well, there aren't enough progressives. We haven't made America socialist yet. The Republicans are fighting us. You can go on and on and on about why it doesn't work. Well, wait a minute. We're paying the criminals to not commit crime. It didn't work. That's because everyone, it can't just be in San Francisco. Everyone in the nation has to pay. Every state, every city has to pay the criminals not to commit crime. Then there will be no crime. Just like when we said that they needed to create red flag laws so there would be no gun crime. Just like they said we need a New York Safe Act so that there would be no gun crimes. Just like they're going to tell you every single time. It has to be everyone. Everyone has to be progressive. And if everyone is progressive, no one's going to commit a crime. That's a lie. That's a crock. Yes, Mavis, I was talking about the teacher in California who said he had 180 days to indoctrinate children. And we see that all the time. We see a lot of teachers who are doing that. It's because they believe in critical race theory, and critical race theory is inherently racist. And every time parents find out and they realize, wait a minute, this is what you're telling our kids every day. This is what you're trying to teach them. You're trying to teach them segregation and racism. You're trying to teach them that the government has more control over their lives, that the government gets to decide whether or not they're trans, whether or not they're gay. The government gets to decide what medical treatments they get and how to take care of their bodies. The government has that choice. The government gets to choose whether or not they get to mix with other students of different races. Yeah. The more you hear that, and when parents hear it, yeah, we freak out, but it's happening every day. And it's been happening for years, for decades. We just need to turn it around. I'll give you another reason why you have to pay attention to this stuff, folks. This is from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I want you to see something here, and you can see the chart right here. This is inflation. This is what Joe Biden told you is only temporary. He told you that he has the solution. He's going to fix the economy because it wasn't good under Trump. Orange Man Bad had a bad economy. Look at this. This is where inflation is. It's spiking. He's driving it up higher and higher. This is all jobs that are available in America. Over 6.7 million jobs are available. Job openings right now. People aren't filling the jobs. The cost of everything is going higher. It's insane. It is insane. And how many people, and I want you to see this. Here's the trend that we're seeing. Whoops. Sorry about that. Here's the trend that we're seeing. We have more people now than in the lockdowns in 2020. I know I'm being lagged. Nothing I can do about it. In 2020, we have more people who are working part-time today than in all of 2020. We have more people now than in 2020 who cannot get jobs and are stuck with part-time jobs. That's a fact. This is from the A8 section of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That's the reality of what's going on right now. They are destroying our nation. Oops. Sorry about that. And it's piece by piece because the government is telling you they're smarter than you. The government's smarter with the economy. That's why we have more people working part-time today than we did in 2020. That's why our economy is getting screwed up. That's why we have the Taliban have more weapons today than in 2020. That's why the Taliban are hunting down Americans today, along with ISIS and Al Qaeda, more than it was in 2020. It's why today we had a guy in New Zealand stabbing an ISIS member of ISIS, stabbing people in New Zealand. It's why we have 1.1 million new illegal aliens that we know of. There's probably more that crossed our southern border, broke our law. They are criminals. That's worse than in 2020. That's worse than in 2019. It's worse than 2018. Each and every one of these things I'm mentioning. There is more inflation today than there has been in the last 10 years. Things cost more today than it's ever been before. Because the government is making the choices for you. And now they want to make the choices for your health care. And they want to tell you what you can do with your body. And they're going to say, it's great, it's important, because you get to choose sometimes on certain subjects. And if you disagree with us, well, then you're not a human being. Then you're not a person. You're just evil. You're a racist. You're a bigot. You're a sexist. You're an ist and a phobe. And you are bad and you have to be canceled. And they'll lag out your live feeds. And they'll make it difficult for people to see what you have to say. And they'll make it difficult for people to make comments. It's troubling, folks. I wish I had a better word for it, but I don't. We've got 5 minutes. And in 5 minutes, you can call into this program at 607-242-1582, or you can leave a comment. Have you seen Jason, Mavis, Ann, Vic, so many others? If you want to talk about abortion, if you want to speak about the Clinton Foundation, like Dal had mentioned, if you want to address, well, any of the subjects, if you're anywhere in the world, our friends in England, Agent Black, and so many others, if you're down in Peru dealing with the Lambda variant of the pandemic, if you're in New Zealand and you're trying to deal with the thought that ISIS has invaded your country because the United States ran away from the Taliban and gave weapons and money to ISIS, I'd love to hear your comment about that. If you are an American who knows one of the 200, maybe 2,000 people who are stuck in Afghanistan today and can't go home, I'd love to hear your voice. And mind you, it doesn't even have to be today. If you see this after we're live, you see the video, you've made it this far, please leave a comment. Also, do me a favor, please subscribe. If you've gotten through 2 hours, if you've gotten to this point in the video, or at any point, if you found it to be interesting, like it, share it, please subscribe, because that helps us to share this with more people around the world. The algorithms go from, the more people we have, the algorithms go from hiding us from the public to showing this to the public, to let people have their voices. And I don't care if they're on the left, the right, the center, the libertarians, or progressives, it doesn't matter. I want to hear from everyone. And I want to hear from you from everywhere in the world. Because there's so much that is not being told to the American people. Like when the Times of India comes out and tells us that it is confirmed that the Taliban is ISIS, that ISIS is in control, that what Joe Biden did not only encouraged the ISIS, which is the Taliban, but also it's helping Yemen and the Houthis, and it's encouraging the global terror coming out of Iran, affecting Israelis as well as Americans, as well as the rest of the world. And the only answers we get from some of these progressives is, oh, we'll pay you money. We'll pay you money not to be mean to us. And you better do what we say, or else your business is going to close down and you're going to be a non-person. How dare you disagree? I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just me. I don't think so, though. There are hundreds of people that agree with this program. There are hundreds of people who watch these videos that speak about these issues. And you can be part of those hundreds of people. It can be thousands of people. Because around the world, you're not alone. They want you to think you're alone. In fact, that's what they wanted people to think in Johnson City. The news media didn't want to cover this. Like so many of the things we're talking about right now, they didn't want the general public to know that their friends, their family, doctors, and nurses, that they all agree that the vaccine mandates are wrong. The news media said they would not cover it. They directly told the organizers of the event that they would not tell people. And then because of this program in part, and also Bill Houston, who has a podcast, and Bill Houston, by the way, is a Democrat. He is a left-leaning Democrat. And Bill Houston's podcast and this program, because we came out and we helped to put this out on, to let the public know about this. That's why when 600 people showed up, the news media was forced to come out and actually admit it. That they had to actually tell people, yes, your neighbors think the government has gone too far. Yes, they're doing something peacefully about this. And then the news media demonized the people and said that they're disgruntled. They're disgruntled people. No, they're just doctors and nurses that actually care about your health and your choices for your future. So every time you're subscribing, you help us reach more of those people to help them know you're not alone. The news media wants you to think you are. You're not. There are thousands of you, tens of thousands of you in every single city, all across the United States, tens of thousands of you in every single city across the world. And I'm not asking for the audience of Tucker Carlson or Rachel Maddow. I just want you to enjoy. So with that said, I realize that this is lagging behind. I'm not sure how far this is lagging behind. It's not our settings, by the way, folks. If you notice, I reduced the quality of the image just to make sure that we could get this out to you in a clean signal. And for most of the show, it was. But there are certain things that I say that the internet overlords, they don't like it. That's why we believe in free speech on this show. We believe in your right to say whatever it is you wish, that whether you agree with us or disagree, that's okay. We believe in free speech. The internet overlords do not, which is why they make it so difficult to watch this program live. It's why they try and shadow ban this program and to keep us down, to not let you subscribe. They don't want you to subscribe because they know if you subscribe, you're going to hear the truth that won't be told in the United States. I'm going to cover the events like Bill Clinton in Skinny Atlas as he's getting money for people out of state, but not helping the people in New York State. Because I'm going to go down to Johnson City in the southern tier of New York, and I'm going to cover the protests that the news media won't tell you is existing. Because I'm going to go and do the homework and find out what the Times of India has to say about what's going on in Afghanistan and how it's affecting American citizens around the world. It's because you guys make it possible. It's you. Not because of money. I'm losing money. I lose money every year. I do this because I believe in you, and I have a passion for this. I believe in it. And I believe in you. I believe when you get the information, You'll help to make things better. And that's exactly why they don't want you to hear this. They don't want it better. They just want you to submit. And I disagree with that. This channel disagrees with that. So, with that said, I'm going to give it about 2 more minutes, and then we're going to end the show. I want to thank you guys for taking the time to be with us here today. Every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do our live stream with you, and we look forward to always hearing your comments. Just like you've seen so many, Jason, Mavis, Dal, Ann, and Vic, and I know I'm missing a few people here. Hot Chicks, who is on, and Gloria Miller, thank you, a new person who joined us today. I'm so thankful for each and every one of you, and everyone who has watched this, everyone who has spoken about it, everyone who shares it. I thank you all so much, so much. And with that, folks, I want you to have a great week. We'll have a couple more episodes during the week. We have an event that's going to be coming up on September 18th that we'll be covering live. I want you to look forward to that. But until the next time, I thank you and I wish you the best.